All right, so let's continue from where we stop. Let's continue from where we stop, and we'll be looking at HTML forms today. The last time we did, we stopped at navbar. We were able to create vertical and horizontal navbar. So we just build on that. Excuse me. Like I said before, whatever we are doing is just building on what we've done before, and that is how programming is. So whatever we are doing now, we're just building on what we've done before. All right. So these are all the pages we created the last class, in our last class, and one thing I just wanted to show us is how we can view our page live. Rather than going to the browser, come back, go to browser, come back, I introduce us to the browser because I want us to know how we can, preview our web page from our browser. Go to your file, open your file, and you're able to choose the browser you want to use, and then you preview that. All right, but there's a simpler way, a faster way that we can also do that. So we can view our code live. So as we are working, we can see what we are working on. And how do we do that? We just go to extension. This is the icon for extension. And here I will type live preview. All right. So live preview, this is, I think the one by Microsoft is what I'm looking for. Yes, Microsoft. So here I will just install. So tap on install and it will install. So I have installed live preview. All right. So now I've installed live preview. I have to go to my Explorer. From extensions, I have to go to my Explorer. And let me open one of these HTML files. So I will open, let me just close this. I will open index.html. And here, I want to preview this code live. This was what we did where we stopped the last time. I want to preview this code live. So because we have installed live preview, if I come here, this icon, you can see it's saying show live preview. So I click on it, and then I can view my website live within my code editor. So I don't need to go to the web page and come back. All I need to do is write my code, and I can see the changes live. It makes the work easier. It makes the work faster for us. So I am sure this is game for us. I thought I should put this out there. Since we already know how to go to our file, project folder, go to our file, and open it in the browser, I thought I should also introduce us to this. So like I said from the beginning, we have a lot to learn through this process. And I cannot just, feed us with everything the same day, one day. So we need to be moving a step a day, one step a day, one step a day. All right, let's go ahead. I'm sure this navbar, we are good with it, and the assignment, Miracle, well done. I saw your assignment. That was good. And anyone that have not done, please try and do your assignment. Creating a navbar with 5 navigation pages. All right. So let me then introduce us to HTML forms, and like I said, hopefully by next class we should be doing introduction to CSS. We have covered all the basic blocks of HTML. So I will just go down here, and then let me use here for the forms. So HTML forms, so you type forms, and under form we have action. So the action simply is where do you want to submit your form to. For now, we cannot submit our form because we are writing only the front end of the website, so we cannot submit our form. Now, this form, if we're writing both the front end and back end, then we are able to submit our form and we can get our form details from the database. So that will come later in this challenge. But for now, just know that when you have form, the action is where you are submitting your form to. And then you can also get something like either get or post to post your form. Okay, but let's leave that. It's above the scope of this particular training. All right, so here we have our form and the action. We just set it to index.php for now, which will not be submitted because we don't have a back-end language that will accept this form for us. So we have our opening and closing tag of the form, and then we'll have our action. And the next thing we need to do is to then put in our form. So forms basically are just is just a way of getting input from web visitors, from website visitors. So we want to get input from our visitors. They are coming to our website for the very first time and we want to collect your data. We want you to sign up so that next time when you come, you can log in or sign in, something like that. So what do we need to do? We need to ask you to give us your details. So we just write a simple form. And to write that, first, we will need input. So this is what we are asking. This input is actually a box that will allow users to put in whatever they have to put in, their name, their email, their password, whatever, when they are signing up or when they are trying to log in. So input, and then the input type. And let me just mention that input tags are self-closing tags, so they don't have a backward slash. They are just self-closing tags, just like a B arrow for line break and H arrow for horizontal line. Okay, so input tags are self-closing tags. So the type here, we will say text, okay? Let's say our first type is text. All right. So we are saying that the type of input we are looking for here is going to be text. It's going to be text. All right. The next thing we want to get is just to get the ID. So ID here, it's for styling and then for JavaScript. But we'll just get a ID for it as an identity for each of the inputs. So for this, let's call this F name because we want to collect first name here. Let's call it F name. So now you can see that what we have here is just a place where someone can type something, yeah? But it's not looking good because we don't know what to type here. So if I come to your website and I just see this, I really don't know what you are trying to ask for. So I need to make sure that I am passing out the right information. Okay, I am passing out the right information. So what do? I want to collect first name. All right. So I will use something called label. All right. Label. Now this label will help me to write a label for this input so that you will know that this is actually for first name. Now the for attribute, FOR attribute, is actually for screen recorder, maybe for people that use screen recorder, screen help. So here I will just type the same thing I use for my ID, which is F name is what I will have here. And then for the label, I want to ask for first name. I want to ask for first name, just like this. Okay, so now I am asking you for first name. So what I can do now is to make this input field required, such that if a user doesn't input this field, then my form will not submit. So let's just, before then, let me add a submit button. I will just do input, and then under the type, I will just put submit, something like that. Okay. So here we have a submit button, but let me bring this down to a new line. So I will go to my input and then BR for, new line, something like that, just for line break. Okay, so now if I tap on this, it will submit. Now it's showing this because we don't have any file called index.php because there's no backend language here. Okay. But if I then make this input file to be required, if I say required, so required simply means that you must fill this particular field for you to be able to submit this file or this form. So if I tap on submit, it's going to ask me to fill this field. Now remember, the first time I tap on submit, it just submitted without asking me. Because I've made this required, it's asking us to fill this. So I have to fill this and say X and son, and I submit. Yeah. But I still don't want someone to have first name that is just okay, so it's possible for someone to have first name that is just 3 names, like South Koreans and all that. All right, but let's say we are dealing with Nigerians, so it's very difficult to see the Nigerian that have just 3 letters for first name. So here I would say, still under the input, I would say the minimum characters I want to have under the first name, minimum characters should be 4 letters. So meaning if I type anything less than 4 letters, this form will not submit. So if I type son again and say submit, okay, here it has submitted. I said minimum should be 4. Okay, let me just be sure of what this is. Maximum, so let me get maximum to be sorry. Oh yeah, I see that. So it's supposed to be minimum length 4. Yeah. So if I type in 3 characters, then it should say, you need to have up to 4. Yep. So that is it. Minimum length, not minimum. Please take that. Okay, so that is it. And then you can also set the maximum length and say, I don't want it to exceed so number. And that is for password, especially for those guys that just want to come and, pour virus into your website. You can use that to checkmate. So you can set the maximum length for your password. So it's not more than a particular level. So we'll get there. So the next thing we will do, now we have our first name. We're just going to create a basic form. Let's also ask for last name. So here we just start with the label, right? I'll start with label. And then for, I will say L name. And here, let's say last name. So we're asking for last name here. Okay. So let's get our input tag, and we say input. And here we're going to accept test. And we're going to make this required. And then let's add our ID. And our ID should match the 4, which is L name. Okay. So here we have our first name, we have our last name. Let's go ahead and add a double line break, something like that. Okay. So now we can type in first name and second name, and we can then submit our form. But let's also make this a bit simpler for anyone that wants to use this form. Let's add what we call placeholder. So we add placeholder. So placeholder simply, we just have a fainted font telling us that this is what you need to do. So here I will just write your first name, something like that. Okay, and then here I will just write your last name. No, sorry, it has to be inside the placeholder. So placeholder, then write your last name. Okay, now, you know, I'm sure that you've gone to fill a form somewhere once in a while and you just discover that you don't even understand what they are asking for. So placeholder will help you to know that this is exactly what they want you to do. Sometimes you want to fill some form and then the phone number format is slightly different from what you know because they've set a particular phone number format. So if there's no placeholder, it's difficult for you to know what they want you to do. But with placeholder, you can easily know that, okay, this is what they want you to do. So here, if I tap here, I can type my name and then the text will disappear. So that text is only there to tell you that this is what you want to do. So once I click on the input box, that text will disappear when I start writing my name. All right. So here we can make it required, and then if we tap on submit, it's going to say fill this. So we fill this up to 4 characters. We say submit. It asks us again to fill this because we say that it is required. We say it is required. You see, required. Okay. I want to be sure that it's clear thus far. I want to be sure that it's clear thus far, and you can still hear me. Can you still hear me? Great. All right. So let's move on. So this is just a simple form that you can create. So we can also add a bit more. So here I will just take the submit button down like this. We can also add a bit more. So let's say we want to collate phone number. So label will be phone number. So our label for let's give it phone, and then label phone number, something like that. And then let's get our input for the user to input phone number. And here under the type, it's number. Okay, so we can say number, we can say text, depending. I like to use text for number. I will show you why. And ID, our ID will be phone, matching the 4 attributes. And then let's also make this to be required. And let's also add a placeholder and say enter your phone number, enter your phone number. Or let's just say write country code first. Okay, let me just leave it at that. So Here we are asking for phone number, and then we say write their country code first. So this is why I don't like using, so let's, before then, let me add a line break. Let me add a line break here. So BR, okay. So here, if I tap on this, you see, it's trying to take me to, numbers where I can move around, but I don't want that. So I always prefer to use my test for phone number. But if you are doing some mathematical formats and all that, or where the person needs to pick number of children and all that, you can use this. What I can also do, if I move this, you see, it's going to minus, and I don't want it to go to minus. So I can then use that minimum and set it that the minimum should be 0. It shouldn't be more than 0. And then the maximum should be 99. So if I try to go below 0, it will not move because I have set the minimum to be 0. So it cannot go to minus. And if I try to go above 99, it will not go because I've set the maximum to be 99. Okay, so that is the input field for number. Okay, let's see a few more input fields. So these are just fields that you can just ask questions about. Simple sign-up form, simple subscription form, data survey form. So these are just basic inputs that you can use. We can also do something and say label. So here for, I will say message. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I will say message, and then here I will say message also. Okay, that is the label, what the user will see. So let's also create where the user can input. So I will say input, and here I will say test area, something like that. Okay. So I can then say make this, so let's give it an ID, and the ID should match the 4, which is message, and then let me also make this required. Okay. So we are still just trying to create a simple form where you can just ask for a few information and you expect that you get the input from users. So you just ask a few questions and then you expect that you get input from users. Okay, let's go ahead. So here we just have to add BR, that's line break and line break. So basically this will help users, to type in the message they want to send to you. Okay, the message is about this, is about that, so it will just enable them to write a message and then they can send that message to you. So another thing we want to look at would be password. So we can also ask for password. So label, and here we can say for, let's say p, okay, let's just spell password. And on that label, we're going to give it password. So we're saying we're asking for password. So let's now write code for the input that the user will input on. So here under the type, we'll say password. And then ID also will be password. And then let's make it required. Of course, you cannot submit a form without a password. So here, let me add the line break. Let me add the line break here. If I try to type in here, you see that the number will be hidden because it is password, so it's not supposed to be visible. So what makes the major difference in your form? Let me just explain that. It's the type. So when I put in the type as phone, as type as number, it changed to something like this. When I put the type as text, it changed to something like this. When I put a type as password, it changed to something like so. Majorly, what makes the major change is the type. The type is the type that makes the major change, because that is what will tell you if you are doing if you are imputing a password, if you are imputing a number, if you're imputing date, so the type, you have to keep an eye on that. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at the next input, which to be date. So here on that label, we're just going to give it date. So we're asking that the user should input date before they submit the form, and then on that input, we're just going to say date on that type. So here, I don't want to give it a name. I will explain name later, but for now, I don't want to give it a name. So ID will just be date because our 4 is date. And then let's just make this required. So these dates can also be, you can't, rather than saying date, you can also be something like birthday if you are trying to get the age of the person that is filling the form. So you can put something like birthday so that the person should know that you are asking for their age. And then, once you put the type as date, you see that automatically it creates a calendar for you. So users can pick from the calendar, or they can directly type here, type their age, type their month and all that. Okay, so like I say, keep an eye on the type, very important. So it's the type that tells you if it's going to be a radio, a checkbox, if it's going to be a password, and all of that. All right. So the next thing we'll look at will be the radio button. I'm sure you've gone to a website where you just have to make a choice. So here, we'll just write our code for the radio button. So we just write a simple code, to pick our radio button. How do we write our code? So this is just a bit lengthy, but nothing to fret about. All you need to do is just to pay a bit of attention and you will get it. All right, just pay a bit of attention. It's just slightly bigger than the normal input tags and all that. So this one, you have to include more fields to get it. Okay, so here we'll try and get our label. Okay, and then the 4, let's say we are trying to get you to tell us which programming language as a front-end developer you prefer. Which is your best programming language? Okay, which one do you prefer? So we can just ask that. So for the 4, we can say HTML, and then under our label, let's say we want to just display HTML here. And then input, under our input type, of course, is going to be radio, because we want to have a radio, something like this. So this is what we call radio button. Okay, you see, immediately I type radio, that came out. All right. So the next thing I want to get is the ID. Of course, the ID has to match the 4. The next thing I want to have is some value. So I will set the value to HTML. All right, so I think I am done for now. I will still come back to this to add something, but for now, I think I am done. So what I'm going to do now is to just copy this, copy the label and the input, and then I'm going to paste it maybe 2 more times or 3 more times. Let's just say 2 more times. Okay, and here, for the second one, we're going to use, under the 4, let's use CSS. And then the label also will carry CSS. Okay, and then the input will be radio, but our ID will change to CSS to match the 4 attributes, and our value will also change to CSS. And then for the third one, our 4 will be Java, our label will be JavaScript, type is radio, ID will match 4, which will be Java, and then value will be Java or JavaScript. Okay, now what I'm supposed to do here is just to pick one out of this, just pick one out of this. Okay, so let's copy our submit button and let it come under the radio buttons. Okay, something like that, and then let's add line break so that it will come back. So guys, if I tap on HTML, tap on CSS, tap on JavaScript, you see it's highlighting the 3. Excuse me, but that's not what I want. All I want is 1. I want to just get 1. You know, it's just to pick one option. So what do I do here? I need to then set a name. So I will set a name value or a name attribute such that I will give all of them a name such that I'm able to pick just one. So here I will set a name attribute and I will call it LANG, that's short form for lang. Okay, for language. So I will just copy this and I will paste this here. Ctrl V, I'll paste this here, and I will also come down here and I will paste this here and save. Okay, so now if I tap on HTML and I tap on CSS, it will move from HTML to CSS. If I tap on JavaScript, it will move from CSS to JavaScript. So this will enable me to pick only one because of this attribute. So this attribute simply is a name attribute that is governing the 3 of them and telling them, hey guys, you know what? It can only be one person, not more than one person. We cannot pick more than one person. It can only be one person. Okay. Another thing I want to show us, another form style or input will be the checkbox. I'm sure we've seen checkbox before, but let's have our label first. And then for 4, the checkbox, we just need to check maybe 1 or 2 things inside the box, inside the form. So let's say we are asking if the person is maybe a male or a female or something. Okay, so 4, let's just say male, and then for our label we need to put what we want to ask. So I will say male, just like that. and then let's then bring our input tab. So input, and then we will say under here, under the type, of course, we want to use the checkbox because we want to pick out, our favorite from the list. Okay. And then let's add our ID that will match our 4. So our ID is male. Let's add the value. Our value will be male for now. Okay. Our value will be male. And let's also add a name. So name, and let's give it gender. Okay. So I'll go ahead and have other checkboxes. So label 4, let's give it female. And then the label, let's say is female, yeah. So let's bring our input. So for our input, 4, type checkbox, ID will match 4, which is female. Value, let's also give it female. And then name, let's give it gender. So you can actually give it gender 2, just something like that, because we don't want it to be like radio. We want to be able to select more than one. Okay, so the next label, maybe gender will not be the right thing to use here, but yeah, just so we can understand what we're talking about. Okay, I think we'll have 15 minutes for the call to end. I guess that should be the prompt. So let me see if I can try and round up within that time. So yeah, let's label. And then for the 4, let's have others. And then for label, let's have others. And let's bring our input. Checkbox, it has to be. ID, let's give it same name as 4, which is others. Value, let's give it others. And name, let's give it gender 2, just something like that. Okay, and I think we've done justice to that. Okay, so maybe we can add one input field. So let's say label, and let's add one more input field. So here we'll say what do we use here? We have a lot. We'll say trans under the 4, and then here we say transgender. Okay, and then under the input, our type will be checkbox because we want them to check. Okay, our name will be gender 3, and then ID should match the 4, which is trans. And I think we've done justice to that. So let's just give it a value, and the value will be transgender. Okay, so let's put a line break so that we're able to bring the submit button down. Great. So here we have our checkbox, and then you can also, make sure your checkbox it's, styled vertically instead of horizontally. And you know how to do that. Simply after each of your input, you just put a B arrow here. So if you put a B arrow, then the next checkbox should come down. I put a B arrow here, the next checkbox should come down. I put a B arrow here. All right, so you can also have your checkbox arranged this way. So you can then add maybe an input at the top, or a P tag, or whatever you want to use to say what is your agenda, something like that. So at the top here, you can just ask what is your agenda, so that someone should be able to know, okay, they're asking for my agenda. What is agenda? Something like this. Okay. So we can actually use a label to get that. Let's use a label. But this label, the 4 will be empty, so I will just ask yep. What is the agenda? Okay, and then let me just add a BRO tag here, something like that. So what is your agenda? And then you can pick if you're a female, if you think you're a female, if it's others and trans, or, whatever you want to pick, you can pick it. So this can go for when you have to pick multiple items, like I said, and then the radio can go for when you just have to pick one thing. Okay, and what's your favorite front-end language? So you can just pick one, either HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. And here we can also use a label to ask the question. Label. Okay, and then we can just ask, what is your favorite front-end language? Okay, and then let's add a line break. So we can ask, what's their favorite front-end language with a label, and then they have to pick one, and then we can just, so basically, this is how you can create your form in HTML. So with this form, you can actually style your form. So when we start doing CSS, you see how we can style our form. So basically, if we want to style our form, like we did in our last class, what we can do is, from the top here, we can just add a div here. No. Here. We can just add a div here. All right. So this should be the opening tag of our div, and then we'll close our div after the form here. So we'll add the closing tag here of the div. So the div is carrying everything that is inside here. So here we can give our div a class name. We did classes before, and then we'll call it forms, right? So if we open our CSS file now, and pick dot form, since it's a class, so it's a dot, a period, dot form. So we can just give it background color and say black. So everything has turned to black. And we can give it a text color and say the text color should be white. Okay, and we can just play around with it. Text align, we can give it a text align and say text align is center, so that it pushes everything to the center. All right, we can give it a padding and all that, so we can decide to do whatever we want to do. We can pad it a bit down, give it a margin. We can say padding and then we can give it like 20 ps, something like that. And then we can also style the inputs tags. You can style, so the input tags will be these are the inputs, and then these are the label. So if you like the question Miracle asked in the last class, if you are to style this now, you know that this has to be the label and this has to be the input tag. So if I want to style, let's say I am planning to style this label. Now I cannot stay here inside the forms and style this, it wouldn't affect it. So I have to come and say label. So if I say label, that means I am targeting all the label, that's all the text. So if I say label and I say, let me say font size, and I give a font size of 20 ps, you see it affects just this the font, you know, because that is the primary distance. So if I say color and I want to change the color, I say color, and let's say I give it this color, you see only the text change because it's label. So if I want to style this guy now, the input, then I have to come and pick input here and give it a style. So I can say input and I say border radius, and I'll give it 10 ps. So if I give it 10 ps, you see it affects only the input tag. So I can also give it a padding and say padding, let me say 10 ps, and then you see it affects only this guy. So basically, we'll get to CSS, you understand more of this, but you know, it's sometimes HTML just looks boring, and I just try to put a bit of CSS to that. So hopefully by next week, next class, before we do dive into CSS, I will try to break down different sections of your HTML web page so that you can see how your web page is structured, and when you're working with a web page, you should be able to understand why what, okay, why what on your web page. I think we should call it a day now. I hope we've learned something, except there is a question. So if you have a question, you can ask a question, but if not, then we'll call it a day. And please, you need to rewatch this if you really want to get this. Rewatch this. This should be up this night or tomorrow morning, so you can rewatch this, and you know, so that you can really get everything. I think the only thing that looks a bit complicated is the radio button and the checkbox, but everyone that is just you asking a website visitors to fill in a form, you know, maybe as sign up form, as login form, you know, our subscribers form, just you know, simple forms, you know, on your website. All right, guys. So I think we call it a day. You work miracle. We call it a day. Do have yourself a pleasant night rest. Okay, guys. Bye.